Hello, I am Ilona, and today I want to talk about one other place. It is interesting. Okay, I guess people can find a lot of historical places around them where they live. It's not like this is something very unusual, but maybe it is more unusual for countries like Latvia, where not like we don't have this history. Of course, well, obviously we do, but it is not so well preserved and it is not so popular. People are more interested in what? Romans, ancient Greece, this is where people travel and everything, or France. And yes, there is a much more preserved architecture, for example. But because if we talk about Latvia, we had wooden castles for much more, for longer, and they didn't really preserved. I grew up in this small town not far from Jersika. So I was wondering if I am related in any ways to these ancient people who lived in Jersika, because it felt like something from fairy tales, even for a child, of course. But now, obviously, I understand that most likely, of course, these people who lived in that area, not all of them are gone, like in DNA. We have this continuity in people. Yes, there were wars, there were plagues, there were famines. Yes, all these things existed, and a lot of people really died without leaving any trace, but not all of them. And people who live there now, they had ancestors, and they were most likely the biggest chunk of them were locals. Yes, there were some newer arrivals, of course, but still. And yeah, how I know that? We don't know DNA samples. I think that is not available. Don't see from anywhere around Latgalian or Jersika, at least not on my transit tree, which is unfortunate. But if people from thousands of years ago are still showing this kind of relationship to me through DNA, then obviously a lot of them were who were my ancestors were locals. About Jersika. Jersika is near the Daugava, which explains the Vikings in DNA, for example. Because this was basically, yeah, the main road for them. Yes, you could cross. I think Daugava is, well, maybe all Belarus even, I don't know. So this was very useful river. And about Jersika, what is interesting, on the other side, there is another hill fort. So Jersika hill fort and uh, Dignai hill fort. So they were connected. And connection between both sides of the river, we have it still even today. So people did moved. It was not like you couldn't cross the river, but it was one layer of protection if you had some kind of enemies on this side or someone with who you didn't have very good relationship. Having the hill fort on another side of the river was very useful. For example, this ferry, yes, and it is operating for some time already. Like I don't know how long. It's not new, and before that, most likely something similar was here, like some kind of boats or something. It could be something from long time ago. This idea of traveling, and of course in winter, for example, you could just cross it because it was covered in ice usually. But about this Jersika hill fort, what I want to say, we know the last ruler of it, which was Visvaldis, but he was definitely not the first. Here must be some kind of like a river which something happened to it. Looking at the more ancient maps, And in descriptions about Hillfort, it is clearly visible that there are other small streams on other sides which were also natural barriers. But something happened to these rivers. They are not really here anymore. Unfortunately, on Google Maps, it is not visible. But what is visible on Google Maps is this another much older hill fort on the other side. These are probably one of the most well known, but hill forts are being found even today. We don't know locations of all of them because yes, they lost their significance and people slowly forgot about their existence. What is also interesting in this area, these kind of like, yes, not kind of like these islands, which I imagine how they were used. No one knows about this last ruler. What was his ethnicity, for example? He was married to a woman from somewhere from here. So with a daughter of some kind of just Lithuanian, well, let's say king, simpler. And from what my understanding, it was from somewhere around here. But here is another thing what I found out. But I could there could be connection. I don't know if there is, but this is weird. I found the river, or more like this lake, also near some kind of like a hill fort with the name where we have a river near the Jersika. It's tiny river. It doesn't even exist probably now. But I saw it on older map. It's a very similar name, almost the same. What could be explanation for that?